Welcome back to Windows on the World. This is part 2. I've now got Piers Corbyn is rattling his teacup here, so everything's under control. Well, I like a bit of unpredictability because the actual people who are staging these globalist protests are very predictable, as we talked about in the first part of the show. We've already heard from Francis Leader, and we're now going to hear from Piers Corbyn and Sandy Adams in part 2. Not all at once, of course, but we're going to bring them in slowly. If you listen to the first part of the show, you'll hear about how we talked about change agent groups within everything that you can possibly think of, including local authorities, the police, local organisations, NGOs, charities, and, of course, fake protest groups, because, as we keep saying, the globalists need anti-globalists to implement their policies. And what could be a better way of implementing your policies than to use protest groups? Always control all sides. That's the first part of the globalist agenda. Of course, you need the divide and rule strategies as well. So, going to catch up now with what Piers Corbyn has been doing. I know what he was doing last week because we were doing talks up in Lytham. We went to Blackpool, didn't we, Piers? We went to sunny Blackpool.
And before that we went to Salford.
Yeah, we went to Salford on Saturday, Blackpool on Monday, actually, because we drove back through Blackpool, and that's changed a bit.
And Sunday we were at Lytham St Anne's.
Well, yes, I'm talking about Monday now, Piers. Keep up. I mean, we're dealing with globalists here.
They get up today.
They get up very early in the morning, Piers. We've got to be ahead of them. We got up very early in the morning. Now went all the way down to Blackpool. Very cold it was, and you spent about. You got a pound's worth of 2p's, and you lost the whole lot, didn't you? It was absolutely reckless.
No, not entirely. Because I got some free tickets.
Oh, you got some free things.
I got back 20p, and which I kept, and I got some free prize tickets, and I spent those on a little happy clappy sign.
Yes, you did.
Saying your friends are the family you choose.
Oh yes, that's right. We had to go to the booth to pick it up, and that's right. You get your tickets.
We were the only people in the.
We're the only people in the whole amusement arcade. It is a bit off season, and they say, oh, you put your tickets in there because Piers puts his a little fountain of 2p's.
And then they got a token.
The never falling fountain of 2p's, and you put a pound's within, and you got about 30p back, didn't you? Or something.
That's right. Well, I carried on until, but I think they just skim them off from time to time. So.
Yeah, so it's all trivia, you see. But the thing is, it's been a whirlwind of crazy nights, gambling, lunacy, and driving. I mean,
I gambled a quid.
I know, don't ruin it. No, we've got to portray ourselves as hellraisers now and again. All right, we were very modest. I didn't spend anything actually. I used
to gamble 600 quid a month.
I bought some Blackpool Rock though, but no one wants it. No one wants to eat it because it doesn't look edible, you see. Yeah. And we got some fridge magnets, didn't we? Fridge magnets, yeah. We're at divesting into trivia here.
No, okay, let's get back.
Wonder what it'd be like. So, yes, carry on.
Right, well, I think this stuff about infiltration of groups and organising fake protests isn't new, actually, but it's much more sophisticated from the ruling circles now. You see, for example, I'm a core participant in the inquiry into police infiltration of political groups since 1968, which, curiously enough, was set up by no less than Theresa May when she was Home Secretary. Why she set it up isn't very clear. It might be to find out what we're still doing, because some people come forward to complain about how they were infiltrated. Anyway, and then they can check on us, our latest things. But you see, then, of course, they had to send round policemen to stuff and disguised and so forth. But now they have the internet, Google, everything. They're monitoring your mobile phone and setting up fake protests for people to join in, which was probably well, I'm sure they did fake protests before, but now they're more sophisticated. And Extinction Rebellion is one of them. And if you just look into the background, as has been reported, it's astounding how close the operation centre is to the powers that be that want Agenda 21 and want to actually completely imprison us and super exploit the world. ExxonMobil and Merrill Lynch are right there telling people what to do.
This is it. The globalists need the anti-globalists, you see.
And of course, we had a great fun event on Saturday, where we gave out leaflets to the Extinction Rebellion people and had some discussions with people. But mostly the people there are completely ill-informed or ignorant.
Well, I've got onto that in the first part of the show. It's quite funny because that guy, his son had been laying in the road. So he kept saying, I've come all the way from Gloucester for this. As though that was the whole political aim, that I've come from Gloucester for this, so it must be all right.
Yes.
We gave them some leaflets, though.
Sure. But you see, it's a well-known thing that if people do something for what they believe in, they tend to believe in it even more strongly, whether it's true or not. So what we're doing now is we found the leaflets are getting picked up by a certain proportion of people in Extinction Rebellion. I mean, there's not actually many people they've got out and about, actually. They get greatly exaggerated by mixing up with crowds. But we've been giving out these leaflets. We've got a new leaflet which you can get a copy of on if you go to weatheraction.com or my Twitter at Piers_Corbyn. You can easily download a copy of this leaflet, which you'll find very interesting. And we're going to give out some more on Monday, so anyone who's got time, come along to Whitechapel Tube at 6:25, and from there we're going to go along to a meeting of Extinction Rebellion, not with the idea of going into it, unless people are that way inclined, but to give out leaflets to it. The leaflets basically point out that they are being manipulated by various powers that be, but globalist operators, including ExxonMobil, and they'd be better employed with their time were they to do protests about real things where you can make a difference now, such as energy prices and protesting about social cleansing. You see, in France, for example, there is now incredible activity, as I'm sure you've heard, where there's been riots in Paris about energy prices, largely about the price of fuel in petrol. But you see, electricity prices, gas prices and petrol prices are all completely combined. And the Agenda 21 policy is to increase these. And when they talk about redistribution of wealth, they are redistributing wealth, but not downwards, they're redistributing upwards. And as we speak, the rich are getting richer and richer, and the poor getting poorer and poorer. I mean, the current ratio of cost to price for energy is typically, 2 to 1, or they want to move it to 3 to 1. And for housing, it's moving to 10 to 1 in parts of London as we speak. And, the other parts go to somebody. And the somebodies are the people at the top of the money pyramid.
I went through Bow yesterday and driving through there on the A102 up to after going through the Blackwall Tunnel, Bow, and some new apartments built. It's incredible what's happening down there in that Greenwich Peninsula and all around that area, because it's now just one big building site. You wouldn't think that there was that much space left, and there isn't, and they're using it though. But the flats there from the side of the road, basically register your interest now. Flats starting at 580 grand.
What,
now,
one person, are they?
You can buy
Which is
a mansion in the country, right?
Yeah.
Now, the point is that's why they want to get people out of the country, because you can live really nicely there. But who's got that sort of money for a flat in a place, a part of London that previously nobody really wanted to live unless they had no money at all? It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, what they're going to do is offer people mortgages which carry on for your whole lifetime. if not your children's lifetime.
That's it.
And in the end, the banks will own it all, and people will be just ruled by them. But see, we have to campaign for housing at cost, which is currently known as council housing, transport at cost, which is more or less what Transport for London is. But the railways are not, which is why they've got to be nationalised. And there's no reason why these things should be the price they are. The only reason is for that is the globalist world interests are desperate to defend their profits.
This is absolutely right. Now, we're going to bring Sandy Adams into the conversation. Are you there, Sandy?
I am indeed, yeah.
That's great, we can hear you. We lost your connection. It was making some kind of 60s type space age noises for a minute, but I think you've reconnected again, which is good. But yes, so I think you've been listening to the show tonight, and of course we were all doing the talks last week, which was great. Very tiring. Took me a couple of days to get over it with all the driving and that actually.
It was it was lovely though. It was such a good vibe up there. We had such good talks. Yeah, it was great.
Well, it was very hassle-free, wasn't it? Because we had Angie looking after us, and then we went up to see Rob, and it was great. We even got a curry after the show, and the next day we drove back through Blackpool, and it was all quite well planned and executed. Long may that be the case. You know, so...
But the Golden Mile is now a poverty mile.
Oh, yeah, it was quite depressing, actually, because my grandmother used to live in Blackpool, and, going there now, it's like it's gone. It's like a lot of these sort of faded seaside resorts, you know, and I had this idea years ago for this film about this kind of electromechanical kind of cartoon character that went around all the piers, and it really reminded me of that. A faded place that's actually empty, and the busiest place, as usual, was Wetherspoons, the Albert and Lion.
It was, yes,
next to the tower. Yeah,
and I had no alcoholic drinks.
He didn't go mad either. I know he did. He spent £1 in the amusements, you know, but you know, I think that our budget at the moment can run to that. But you know, if his gambling habit increases to £2, then I don't know what we're going to do.
Indeed. Well, which reminds us, you should remind people here to give money to Windows on the World on that button and buy weather action forecasts.
That does help us, actually. I mean, I didn't mention that this week.
Because I spend money that comes from forecasts on travelling around, for example, but we shouldn't have to do this. We should, you know...
Yeah, I mean, I'm operating in deficit. I'm operating in deficit, but the idea was that I would do that for a time. It's great actually because there's been a couple of new contributors coming this week, but it's peanuts really. You know, it's not. We're not getting as much as Extinction Rebellion. Not put it that way. We're doing a lot more though. I don't understand it. Why have we not got enough change agents or something? Are we not? Are we resistant to change? It could be something like that, couldn't it?
Well, we made a lot more
glue yourself to something. That's what you need to do.
I was going to,
glue yourself.
Well, I was going to glue myself to the Blackpool Tower, but it cost £15 to get up there. So I kind of thought twice about it. Really. And it was cold as well. I didn't want to do it in the end.
You could have done it outside in the cold, and they would have left you there.
Yes. Oh, they would have done. Yeah. Yeah. But we're going to get back to Sandy now, and any updates from your end, Sandy? And what do you think about what we've been talking about? Those two things.
What two things? Sorry.
Yeah. What do you think about what we've been talking about in the previous show to this one, which was the first part?
Previous show, no.
And also, what have you got to say?
The cryptocurrencies thing is really good because I've always been really wary of that. And I've got a lot of friends that invested in it and have kind of come a cropper really. But I think what Frances was talking about was amazing, and she's absolutely right that these people are looking for a cause because they feel disempowered. And all these things like Extinction Rebellion gives people a platform, but actually, it's the wrong, it's the wrong message, it's the wrong ideology behind it, which is really sad because if all that energy, as Piers was saying, was put into the real stuff, which is what the United Nations are doing to us all in Agenda 21 and understanding what that's all about, we'd be halfway to beating the globalists, but. At the moment, it's the globalists are manipulating a different agenda, so we've just got to battle away as usual.
It's a very good business plan, but it's not impenetrable. So when the template's broken, it becomes obvious, or when it becomes obvious, it becomes broken. More to the point.
I mean, I'm kind of waiting for that to happen because obviously, in my locality, there's a very strong Extinction Rebellion group, and there's a couple of groups, but they're coming together. And bizarrely, I mean, I've got a venue in Glastonbury, and they asked if they could use it for a meeting. And the person that asked me is actually somebody I know, somebody I like very much, who's joined, as a lot of my people I know are joining it. And he asked me if he could use the venue, and I texted him back and said, well, I have to admit I've got concerns about Extinction Rebellion, and I told him what concerns I had, and it was mainly about infiltration and the fact that it's the message is flawed because it's coming from the Globalist. Anyway, he then messaged me back and said, oh, yes. I said, look, you can use the venue provided we could actually have an open debate on it, because actually if you're using my venue and I'm happy to give it for free, I'd just, like to tell you how I feel about Extinction Rebellion as well. And he said, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, let's do that. I'm open to debate. And I said, look, because otherwise I'm going to have to say no, because I don't want to stop free speech. But on the other hand, I can't go along with something I'm not coherent with, or congruent.
Yeah. Well, if it's an open meeting, it will be an open
anyway, he texted back and said, yeah, that's all great. Yes, let's have the room. And I said, I can give it to you for free, blah, blah. And then later on, he texted me and said, oh, I've spoken to the group and we don't want to hear anything negative about, Extinction Rebellion.
Does that mean like not being questioned on the basic fundamental aspects, which are the flawed and absolutely ludicrous IPCC SR15 special report, and that everything's going to be... See, the thing is, in 12 years' time, they're going to go,
the world will be colder in 12 years' time. It'll be very cold.
Yes.
It'll be mini ice age. That's what we'll have in 12 years' time, which is their runaway global warming.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it was very interesting. He said, I've been in lots of groups and I've seen infiltration, but I have a very good radar on this, and I'm not seeing it with liquid.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Really, you haven't got a very good radar.
Well, the whole thing is infiltration, if you like. Just look at the ideas, maybe. They're infiltration.
That's brilliant.
Look at the people in charge. I mean, Exxon Mobil are up there. Do you think they are actually?
Well, we've already been to it's pushing the 5G agenda massively. That's one of the organisations that's linked into them. So we went through that in the first part of the show. It's called the Broadband Stakeholders Group. Now, I think we should probably bring Francis in a little while, but it is getting quite interesting because when we get people within our own group who are facilitating the Extinction Rebellion, I think maybe we've been infiltrated,
Oh, well, is it you or me?
But what I find extraordinary is there's a whole load of people that are against 5G. It's this whole sort of draftive ideology that we were talking about the other day, because they're against fracking, they're against 5G, but they're not against Agenda 21, bringing in smart cities.
And they love the European Union. Except in the north of England, I think you will agree at all those meetings when we pointed out the role of the European Union in promoting the total falsity of man-made climate change and so forth, and that I said the best thing about to do with the EU is just to leave with no deal, and that would be better than anything else. And everybody agreed up there at both the meetings. So I mean, I think people in the London bubble had better wake up. That basically everybody north of Watford, or 90% of them, are probably actually now totally pissed off with what is going on. And if there was a referendum, again, they would vote out. So I don't think there will be any other referendum again. I think the threat of a new referendum is just to blackmail and confuse people and drive them into a sort of... Well, Theresa May's deal is like diktat by the EU without any rights for the United Kingdom. I mean, it is a complete, utter, total insanity. And then they want maybe people to accept somehow staying in the EU as an alternative to insanely staying in there but ruled directly. I don't know. There are many things that could happen between now and the 29th of March. But my view is that the only way forward is no deal and out now. Now, sorry, that was a bit of a diversion from what I was going to say.
I'm interested. Can that just happen? Can we still get a no deal Brexit? Because I'm very confused about the whole thing.
Well, my understanding of it is that Parliament has voted to leave the European Union on the 29th of March.
But she has to get the agreement of all the others,
No, it's been agreed that any deal will be discussed and voted on. Yeah. But my interpretation of the logic would be, if nothing is agreed, we have a no-deal exit on the 29th of March. Now, what the globalists want to do is engineer some sort of new referendum, I think. But I think they're probably having second thoughts about it because they might not win. On George Galloway's show on Russia Today, which I saw yesterday, he put forward the view that he thought they were trying to manipulate people into a 3-question referendum. Like, do you accept the Theresa May deal? Do you accept the European Union as it is? Or do you want to have a no-deal Brexit, which will be accompanied with great fanfares of threat and doom, you see? And so they have a 3-way split and then try and get a majority to stay in, because that would be better than the other two. Now, I don't know, I think it's mad. If you have a 3-way referendum, I mean, that is chaos, but you could have voting, a single transferable vote system, so you vote for one, and then if that doesn't get through, you have a second choice. But I think another referendum is a travesty of democracy, because where does it end? You then have a third one, or we'll end up, if you go down this road like the Congo, where they have an election, then they have a civil war because someone says that the election wasn't fair, and then they have a peacemaking whatever with the United Nations, and then they have another election, then they have another civil war. So it goes on and on, you see. You have to have a system with enough integrity which people can respect, you see, when there's a result. And if we undermine democracy at this stage, I think it will be a very downhill slope for the United Kingdom.
Talking about undermining democracy, Martin's just put into chat, this is about Twitter, he said he got blocked by a woman just for sharing the page about our counter-protest.
What?
He said she clearly does not want to let go of the CO2 being the baddie idea. Well, that's incredible, isn't it? So it was called Globalist Warming Hoax Day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When we went outside the Department of Energy business.
And it was very successful.
It was good, wasn't it? I mean, it was great that the fella actually came out and said, "Oh, you're welcome here." I suppose he was relieved that we didn't glue ourselves to the
He was in
building,
charge of the building. He was not in charge of the IPCC
Well, I know that.
fraud operation.
Well, I know.
Well, and to make it clear to the public. But people should...
I said the manager of the building.
You did.
Well,
maybe you did. Okay, Captain.
Keep on. Come on.
Right, Mr. Windows. We've still got our public meeting on the 20th of December where we've invited Al Gore, the United Nations and the BBC to come along and give their explanation and ask them for proof or evidence that CO2 controls climate, when the actual data shows it's the climate that controls CO2. But what we're doing now is extending this offer of a discussion to Extinction Rebellion, so they can come along too and give us an explanation as to why they're claiming any of this stuff. So keep that in your diaries, 20th of December. We'll extend the deadline for them to respond from the 1st of December to the 10th of December, so they've still got more time. And the other thing to keep in your diaries, of course, is what's going to happen tomorrow. Turn up at Whitechapel Tube at 6:25 and help us give out leaflets.
Yes, please do that. It's always good fun, though. You always
with the placards too.
Of course, we always have a good day doing that, and it was great, wasn't it? That when we were thinking that Westminster Bridge was going to be blocked, but it'd been unblocked and they'd gone, basically, if there was anyone there in the first place. But they went to read out their statement at Buckingham Palace, and we were there, and we had these signs up, and this Russian fella comes up and goes, "Yeah, you're absolutely spot on."
We were there at Downing Street, not Buckingham.
No, we were outside Westminster Tube Station on Westminster Bridge, which is basically opposite Big Ben, which is being refurbished at the moment. So you got all the tourists there asking where Big Ben is, but it's been covered up really, and they've covered up one of the most famous landmarks in London. So yeah, we were there, and
it's extinction.
Yeah, it's going extinct, like like all the species. I think they said bring species that are going extinct, and someone turned up with a bloody dinosaur. Did you see that?
Yeah. See, I think all this talk of species going extinct is probably largely fake news anyway. I mean, in the history of the world, species have always been going extinct, and different types of microbes and so on, and eventually animals are evolving all the time too. But the idea that there's an acceleration of this due to climate is complete nonsense. I mean, all climate changes have happened before, and all the species we see
There is a huge reduction in flying insects, though.
Well, there is, but that has nothing to do with the climate.
No, it's not.
It's to do with man-made insecticides,
Roundup, etc.
And likely also radiation and 5G and so forth, which may be disorientating bees. I mean, it's something that hasn't been studied properly. There is rumours about this, but the 5G promoters don't care a damn. I mean, I dare say they will stick themselves into isolation boxes called Faraday cages where they'll live safely from this stuff, while the rest of us will, all die young and so forth and get brain cancer.
On that happy note,
it's really the extinction. I mean, what's interesting?
That's the extinction.
That's the
extinction, but it's the genocide of the human race that's happening, and they're not. They're banging on about animals, and they're not really thinking about it as well because they don't get Agenda 21, I suppose.
No. Yeah. Well, 6 million people a year, approximately, die from fuel poverty and related illnesses and so on, and that's a United Nations figure from the World Health Organization. Yet other branches of the United Nations are pushing the Agenda 21 story, which causes these deaths, and the people protesting about Extinction Rebellion are completely misguided and mad, frankly.
I think we're giving this
course
the oxygen of publicity, Piers.
Right.
Now, the thing is that Frances wanted to say some more about this. So I'm going to give Frances a call and get her back on, because Frances was in full flow. So listen to part 1 of this show, and also we'll carry on with Frances. Now she's just answered the phone. Hello, Frances. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thanks.
You're coming across great.
You're on air now.
Absolutely. And you're going to carry on with what you were saying in part 1. You had several other points to make, and previously you talked about the sort of infiltration of groups and what's happened with fracking, and we talked generally about this Extinction Rebellion. And also, we were talking about cryptocurrencies. We talked a bit about that. But you had some things that you wanted to add, didn't you?
Yeah. I think a lot of what you've been saying in this earlier discussion just now relates to what I had in mind. So you must be psychic, the three of you. You've gotten into my head.
Well, it's one agenda, and we've sussed it.
Well, this is it. It's a global template, and it's been implemented at a local level. And I think it's more to the point is that we've grasped onto what it's about. I think that's the thing.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that the globalists, as you call them, I always call them the predator class. Because,
well, they are absolutely.
Because that is what they are.
Yeah. Predators have feelings too, Frances.
Of course they do. We mustn't leave them out of this consciousness, must we? But I think since 2010, when the Tories took government, they've been trying to create a riot or an uprising. The government as the agent of the predators.
You mean a fake riot? Fake uprising? You mean trying to create a fake uprising?
No, not a fake uprising. They've been trying to generate a riot by imposing impossible austerity, trashing the poor to the point of death.
That's absolutely true, Frances. And there's a quote from Unlimited, which is a group that trains social entrepreneurs, basically. And they said in 2010 that the result of the cuts will be one of anger, the degree of which is yet to be realised. The idea of the big society is to galvanise that energy, which is what I was talking about in the first part of the show and many other shows where we have change agents controlling the narrative of public opinion at every level. And I think that's what you're talking about, what we've been talking about. It's very important. But that was predicted. This has been predicted for a long time. We're not going to get the sort of rebellion that's happening in France because people just don't seem to do anything here. But what's very easy for them is to get...
Mark,
yes.
I don't think that we will rebel like they do in France because, I don't wish to be disrespectful to the French, but the British are not that stupid. They can see what's going on. They can see that this government, as agents of the predators, are making things as hard as they can so that we get to the point where we want to riot.
Yeah, it's getting blatantly obvious now, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and that is it's problem, reaction, solution. The Extinction Rebellion is a scam to get the youngsters out on the streets. They've been literally advertising in the universities via the student union. Absolutely. And once they've got those big numbers out onto the streets, the police can complain to the government, oh, we can't cope. Hey, presto, martial law. Problem, reaction, solution. They want martial law. That's what I see. That's what I'm seeing this Extinction Rebellion is all about. So that it becomes so big and so uncontrollable, and the police, as you can see when you watch the live streams, are standing back. And at one stage, they were actually being kettled. The police were kettled by people. and this indicated to me, wow, they are making themselves look weak. And they will turn to the government and say, look, because of lack of funding, because of the anger of the people, because of the number of people, you have to help us. We can't cope. And the only answer will be martial law.
Yes, and also this guy Ken Marsh, Police Officers Association of some kind of description. He's always tweeting on Twitter that he wants to see every officer in the country having a taser. Now, I don't think a lot of these people are mentally competent enough to have tasers, because when I asked the police to come into the house, this is in Kent, another lady's contacted me with a story about crime farming in Kent, which is one of the most shocking things I've ever heard. It doesn't surprise me. When I asked these two coppers to come in the house, they started attacking me. Now, if they'd have had tasers, they would have tasered me as well, you know. And I don't think a lot of I don't think the Met Police generally are as bad. I'm talking about, the Kent Police here. That was pretty shocking, and what I've heard about other people's interaction with them. However, the point is this, that they misuse these tasers anyway. So then they're going to give them guns, I mean, the thing is that in France, the police do carry guns, but they're not going to draw them on you. They will probably wrestle you to the ground, but I don't think they'd shoot you. Whereas in this country, we do have incidents where people are getting shot. In
Stockwell.
Well, yes, and also the what was his name? The in Tottenham.
Right.
Yes. I did actually talk to his family afterwards, and Mark. Basically, but he was shot and he wasn't armed, but there was a gun found about 15 feet from him in a sock without his fingerprints on, But the point is that this is what they're rolling out, but also the private security aspect, the private security aspect of it all is very important here, because when they're bringing in these goons, which are being employed more and more, say you get someone like, Canary Wharf has basically got his own private police, and that's the thing, the private police forces that they're trying to roll out. Mark Duggan, that was the chair. Mark Duggan. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get into a debate about that, but the point is that it means that if you're a suspect or you are deemed to be a suspect, they won't think twice about shooting you. I know that happens in America, but the thing is that they do want to deploy all these things. An encouraging side issue here is that Boris Johnson bought these crappy water cannons and they've sold them, apparently. That's what they said in the papers.
Well, they have, but you think they wouldn't have been any use.
No.
If they want to use those things to get Extinction Rebellion, they'll have a problem, because, you see, Francis, although Extinction Rebellion is made to look big on the TV, when they're actually blocking bridges, it's not, because they mix themselves up with tourists and block a bridge. And were the police to use water cannon against that, they would become very unpopular because they'd be sweeping up tourists, which isn't a good idea. But I do agree with you that Extinction Rebellion is there largely to distract youth from anything useful which they might do, such as being in parts of the more effective anti-fracking stuff. But in terms of making Extinction Rebellion into something which is going to be so big that they're going to have to bring in martial law, I don't think that will work, because the impression I've got is that people go along to the events and then they peter out. You see, because when we were outside Downing Street, there was only a handful of them. There was just
there's many more earlier on outside Buckingham Palace.
There had been, but I don't think it will catch on because it's so obviously fraudulent. However, their general mission may well be to, attempt to get more and more of these type of things, and they'll try another movement in a few months' time.
Yes, it's template rebellion. I think that
template rebellion.
Yeah. But you've got like Tommy Robinson. Someone's put that into the chat. I mean, there's much more likelihood of people who follow him actually starting something, and that's what MI5 actually want, because they want to promote the far right as though it exists, and it didn't really exist. No. I don't think it really does exist.
The American alt-right is organised by the Clintonites.
Well, the American we know who's organising the alt-right, and the alt-right is, again, it's another. You've got the we've got the extreme left Antifa and the extreme far right. So we've covered this, cover it in our talks. So we don't need to get into it. But the point is that, this manufactured stuff is a problem. Yeah, I think that Extinction Rebellion thing falls in the middle because it's meant to be that worthy activists who want to save the planet. But there are easier ways of starting civil unrest, and we've got these data mapping companies that can actually monitor things in real time and actually influence things on the ground. That's the most interesting aspect. I mean, getting people on these websites to turn up a place is not really the way to do it. I think that these data mapping companies can create the actual incident and get people to go to it. This is more likely to happen. Well, actually, put it out. They're controlling the narrative on social media, that kind of thing. That does happen, and the police have already reported these groups that they were very worried about. Let's put it this way. When these teenagers put out with having a party at their parents' house on Facebook, thousands of people turn up and smash the place up. I mean, but that you just think if you did that in a more kind of political aspect, you could actually cause an absolute riot. Very simply, and all the press need is the pictures, right? So you only need a few pictures. I mean, nobody would know it happened if it wasn't reported. This is the whole point. So this is the whole thing about this kind of sort of media, is that that people see a picture and then they see some words and they think something's happened. So it's dead easy to stage these things anyway, But as far as like a real sort of rebellion would go, I think that was all mapped out years ago as part of the Agenda 21 plans, because when I lived in the borough of London, North East London, and I found this out was going out everywhere. There were helicopters up in the middle of the night, and they've been mapping this for a long time. I think they've been remapping London, and the idea of the Agenda 21, the smart city thing, and all of this mini Holland stuff is to make things into basically a concentration camp where you can't get in and out, and that's exactly what they've done. So I think a lot of that stuff's nailed down. The intelligence services, people they don't like unpredictability. No, so they need to control every single narrative, and I think that's what sort of worries them. So they have to create all these things, and in actual fact, it may be something spontaneous that they can't control. But the thing is that still works in the favour of the intelligence services. You see what I mean? So if you want to get more and more control, it's in your interest to cause civil unrest. It's obvious, So that's just a basic, really, isn't it? What do you think about that, Francis? Yeah.
Well, they are using a phrase, "We are in rebellion," and on their contact us documentation that I'm looking at right now, they ask you to get in touch, and they explain how they were formed. And they're quite open about it. They say Rising Up was formed by activists who had also been part of Compassionate Revolution, Earth First, Occupy, Plan Stupid.
Plain Stupid, actually. Plain. It's like, I think it was about...
Yeah, the same people.
Demonstrating about
utter falsity.
Airports,
Utter falsity.
New
Radical think tank, Reclaim the Power.
Yes.
And then it further goes on to explain that Compassionate Revolution Limited is a company limited by shares. We have no intention of profiting from this venture. As directors, we gift our time to the company, and we will run the company along gift economy lines.
Okay.
If we need financial support for some element of the work, for example, technology changes, we may ask members to gift donations. Well, they've already done that and got £85,000.
Well, it's incredible, isn't it? So the directors basically get gifts.
ExxonMobil.
It sounds great,
the former chief executive of ExxonMobil could have spared a few pennies in his, and that would be worth 85,000 quid, I should think. Yes.
Okay, so this is one of their manifesto bits: to spark and sustain a spirit of creative rebellion. Creative rebellion. Well, there's nothing creative about what's happened so far, is there? It's very dull. Yeah, which will enable much needed changes in our political, economic, and social landscape. We endeavour to mobilise and train they couldn't change agents. We train organisers. Well, wait a minute. I thought if you organise something, you'd have to be sort of picked out and go, yeah, you look like, you seem to want to organise one in your area, this is what we do. No, they have to be trained to skillfully open up space so that communities can develop the tools they need to address Britain's deeply rooted problems. That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, So what are they saying Britain's deeply rooted problems
they always
are?
close down
CO2.
Centres,
okay, we work to transform our society into one that is compassionate, inclusive, sustainable, equitable and connected.
Right.
It's pure Agenda 21, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think all the evidence seems to point that way, Francis.
You're
yes.
spot on right there. And that list of groups that people have come from are all these fake operations and control groups and people who are kept ignorant and manipulated by, well, essentially the big corporations. You see, I mean, as you may or may not know, that Citizens Online includes in its management setup a former head of ExxonMobil and Lord Anthony Tudor St John, who's involved with Merrill Lynch Bank and promoting 5G.
Yeah, we've got the 5G connections massive with all this, so that's a bit of a coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah, well put it this way, he's part of the various aerospace operations which are going to create 5G. I mean, that's the point.
The argument that they make for the Internet of Things and smart meters and smart cities is that once that kind of infrastructure has been widespread, we will all be able to save energy, and so we won't be needing so much fossil fuel. That's the argument that they are putting up, and I can see how they might be fooled into believing that.
Oh yeah, it's very skillful. Yeah, absolutely. But of course, we have plenty of coal, so we're not going to run out of that. And fossil fuel in the form of oil is not actually a fossil anyway, and isn't going to run out. So that is one of the biggest lies around, next to the CO2 story, that oil can eventually run out. I mean, I've been told by people that actually, if you look at the real basis of oil, which is found at 40,000 feet, way deeper than any living thing has ever been, so it's nothing to do with fossils of living things. There's millions of years of supply down there, which could be got out, and it's probably being created all the time as we speak by high pressure systems in the earth.
But Piers, it is our strategy to bring light to the injustice that too many suffer each day. We feel pain from the abuses of the police and others, and we will keep exposing their violence through our discipline. Well, that's funny, isn't it? Because the police are just letting them lie in the road whenever they want.
I know.
So that's a bit strange.
I know. Even if they tried to get themselves arrested, they probably couldn't. And if they do,
well, they did try. There was a girl from Glastonbury who said that she was going down there specifically to get arrested.
Really?
Why do this? And anyway, she didn't, because nobody was arresting anyone.
No, that's right.
That's right. Yeah,
but all I can say is I'd like to see George Monbiot arrested.
Yeah.
See, George Monbiot and what about Lord Anthony Tudor St John turning up on one of these things and throwing himself at the
I'm
police
afraid, Piers. I've
demanding
got
to be arrested.
to be in the country when that
could be a
happens. I'm in the
martyr.
country every weekend. You
He
know
could be a
that.
martyr.
So don't do that, Piers. I mean, he probably doesn't talk like that. But.
Him and George Monbiot or to link arms and just headbutt a policeman until they get arrested.
Yeah.
You know, and then they could become martyrs and heroes.
Yeah.
But see, they won't. See, instead, but quite frankly, you think if any of these young kids get arrested, I mean, because a lot of them are university students, it is going to affect their careers, you know. And that is sad, you know. They can be misguided and manipulated into this stuff when the people behind it are not affected one jot. They'll just increase their profits by more and more people believing in the lie they're promoting.
It does say here that one of the ringleaders of this states, "We will not condemn those who justly defend their families and communities through the use of force, especially as we must also recognise that it is often our privilege which keeps us safe." Well, the only people that I saw lying down in the road were extraordinarily privileged, you know. They had more privilege than we'll ever have, you know. I mean, I think if Windows on the World tried to protest outside Downing Street, well, I know what the result. Yes, exactly. And I could try and convince them in the police van to listen to it every Sunday night, but it certainly didn't work with Kent Police. They didn't arrest me, actually. They were going to. They said they were going to, but they still haven't. But what I hear about... The thing is that there's a detachment with these people. They are detached from reality. They have no idea what actually goes on. And it's probably that which drives them to lie on the pavement.
Hey, we're getting near 11.
We're getting near 11.
Weather.
Oh, Piers wants to come in with some weather now. So next on Windows on the World, Piers Corbyn with the weather.
Yes. People may have noticed that blast of cold in late October, which had some snow in the north of England and quite a bit of snow in parts of northern Europe. That was predicted by us 6 weeks ahead. Very recently, we've had an extreme cold blast in Canada and the northern and eastern USA, which NASA have admitted is basically record cold compared with records of the last 50 years, as when they started accurately, for example, which is very significant because we predicted this cold blast, but more importantly, it's part of a wild jet stream cold blast which heralds the onset of the mini ice age, and we are in the early stages of this. And of course it means by 2030, i.e. 12 years' time, that Extinction Rebellion are babbling on about, will actually be in a mini ice age, completely the opposite to what they're claiming. What we're saying about the winter, as has been in numbers of papers, without detail though, of course, but we are saying there's going to be some extreme cold blasts and snow in the United Kingdom and Northern Europe. And if you want to know more, what else to do but go on to weatheraction.com and buy some forecasts. And then go to Windows on the World and donate. Well, you could do them the other way around.
Could do, actually, Piers. In fact...
Welcome to Windows on the World. I want to keep bringing our listeners well-researched and useful information. Please consider sponsoring our work by going to windowsontheworld.net and clicking the donate button.
There you go. God. How slick was that?
That was slick indeed. I need a soundtrack like that for weatheraction.com.
Well, it's interesting actually what Angie said. Angie said, is the eventual target going to be the, in inverted commas, conspiracy theorists standing in the way of sensible Extinction Rebellion activists? Well, yes, I think that's a very good point, Angie. And yes. We are the revolution and the revelation. We've got to use their terminology, though. Indeed. We are sustainable, we are inclusive, and we're very diverse.
No, we need to be sustained by business, donations, and people buying forecasts.
You're a capitalist, aren't you?
Well, I'm just trying to make a crust, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like, when we do this for nothing, all right, you people come here, you listen, right?
Listen, bruv,
great,
we do it for nothing.
Listen, bruv, we're out there.
We get a little donation in the bank account here.
We're
in, you know what I mean?
The telescopic sights of the globalist elite. It's dangerous. Someone has to do it, right? but we've got placards, we've got banners, we go out there. We don't line the road, we stand up. Right? We stand up, we don't line the road, right?
But there's lists of all of us. I mean, Google have got a list of everybody that would be very arrestable were they to have martial law. So I think, Angie's, the points made are interesting.
I should, Coco, say so. Okay then, so we've had a very interesting couple of hours on Windows on the World. Francis, are you still there?
I am.
Have you anything to say in conclusion?
Yes, I think that the emphasis of Extinction Rebellion is on their massive fear caused by the IPCC SR15. They are absolutely convinced that catastrophic climate change is inevitable within the next 12 years. One of them actually quoted earlier today that the world is going to starve. We will be starving within the next 10 years. They are so convinced. And it's heartbreaking to listen to it. They're also convinced that the CO2 is the driver of the climate. And this is the change agents within education that have driven this into the younger generations, that CO2 is guilty. And when you say to them, hang on a minute, don't you remember your biology, that without plants being able to breathe in CO2, we would have no oxygen. And you can see this moment of confusion, but then it's gone. And they have been brainwashed into believing that CO2 is the enemy. But the fact is that fossil fuel is not just CO2. It is massive pollution. It is polluted jet fuel in the skies, pouring down all sorts of muck, which are damaging us. It is ship trails all over the oceans, acidifying the oceans. And it is plastics, which are also clogging up the oceans and wrecking everything. It's radioactive, because everything that comes out from the belly of the earth is radioactive. The oil, the gas, it's getting into everything. So these are the factors that make me fight against the oil and gas industry and try to stop fracking, not climate change. No, right. I'm looking at the poisoning that is going on.
The deliberate poisoning.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And these are the issues that are being submerged by this climate change hysteria that is overarching everything, and they're forgetting. What about the poisoning? What about the aquifers? What about the plastics? They're forgetting it.
Well, this is it. When Nestle turn round, their CEO says water is not a human right, and they nick all the water, and then they put it in plastic bottles and add fluoride to it. It tells you all you need to know, really. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. But the point is, yes, this is about management of all resources. How do you get management of all resources? You need a threat. You need a threat, and we are the threat, and we have to be rationed. Everything we have is going to be rationed under Agenda 21, and they want to get down to the global 2 to 3 billion. I'm just going to read something in conclusion.
That's pure eugenics.
Exactly.
That is from the 1930s. It's pure eugenics, hidden under the disguise of saving the planet. We have to. The number of people that I have seen recently online saying we're overpopulated, and I'm like, go up in a plane.
Yeah, it's not.
No.
Okay, I'm just going to finish off with a quote here from General Konstantin Petrov, who died in 2009, and you can find this on YouTube. He was there at the 1992
Rio de
Janeiro conference, and he reports on that. We've reported on what he said before. Do look at our shows, Fake Activism, Extinction Rebellion, where we went into this in a lot more detail, Fake Activism 2, Extinction Rebellion, and Fake Protest, Fake News Special. They were the previous shows to this one. Now, he said this was about 2002, he said, it's now admitted that there are global problems. This is the elite, by the way, saying this. One problem is that there are now too many people on the planet. They think that the Earth can sustain 2 to 3 billion people maximum. This is the theory of the so-called global billion. In other words, they want to get it down to 1 billion, but 2 to 3 billion will do for now. 1 billion people can live well, and the other 5 billion are expendable. They can die of hunger, disease, or addiction. Another problem is that the Earth is round. Oh, sorry, our flat earthers out there. And it has been... Easy now. It has... And yes, another problem is that the Earth is round, and they say it has been thoroughly explored, which of course it hasn't. Everything on the Earth should be taken under control. This is what he's talking about, because the actual factors of Agenda 21 are perfectly described by the globalist agenda anyway, so it's kind of really obvious. Basically, he outlines this and says that the global mafia are the owners of transnational banks and corporations. These 350 clans of families are the owners of about 50% of the world's wealth. Some of the well-known names are Rothschild, Morgan, Oppenheimer, Lieb, Kuhn and Abraham. They are the owners of these banks, including the ones in Switzerland. These 6,000 people own as much wealth as 6 billion people, or all the other people on the planet. Knowing this, there shouldn't be any talk about common values, humanitarian ideals, and all the other things that are used to fool us. So that's exactly the point. And that's what all of the people who get drawn into nonsense and fake protests do not understand. They do not understand how anything works. But because somebody had driven all the way from Gloucester to watch his son lying on the pavement, it meant that the whole thing was validated. Now, we're going to be talking a lot more about this in weeks to come on Windows on the World, because lots more information is coming in. And we're having a lot of fun doing it, actually. So thanks for Francis Leader and, of course, Sandy Adams. And if you'd like to book a talk from Windows on the World, please get in touch and we will be there. It's very enlightening and we have a lot of fun doing it. So until next week, thanks very much. And we'll see you all 9 p.m. next Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Piers.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.